Today, we uncover the dramatic downfall of Ryan Williams, the mayor's son who believed he was above the law. For years, Ryan used his father's influence to get away with anything he wanted, breaking rules, ignoring laws, and intimidating those who stood in his way. But one evening, his arrogance finally caught up with him. When officers caught him illegally parked and tried to issue a ticket, Ryan refused to cooperate, tore up the ticket, and even assaulted an officer. What happens when power and privilege collide with justice? Stay tuned to find out. This story will shock you, and you won't believe how it ends. If you enjoy gripping real-life justice stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Ryan Williams was the kind of person who thought the rules never applied to him. As the son of Mayor Robert Williams, he had spent his life using his father's influence to get away with just about anything. Arrogant, entitled, and careless, Ryan believed that no one in Greenfield would dare challenge him. But on one fateful evening, that belief would be put to the test. That night, Ryan pulled up outside Grand Hall Deli in his sleek black Mustang. The street was narrow, and a bright red "No Parking" sign clearly marked the area as reserved for delivery trucks. But Ryan didn't care. Without a second thought, he parked his car right in front of the deli's entrance, blocking the way, and stepped inside to grab a sandwich. As he disappeared into the store, two police officers, Sam Robbins and Ted Morin, walked down the street on their usual patrol. Officer Sam, a seasoned officer with years on the force, immediately noticed the illegally parked car. "Look at that, Ted," he muttered, shaking his head. The two officers approached the Mustang, checked the license plate, and confirmed what they already suspected: Ryan Williams. Without hesitation, Officer Sam pulled out his ticket pad and began writing a citation. Little did they know, this simple parking violation was about to turn into something much bigger. Just as Officer Sam finished writing the ticket, the door to the deli swung open, and Ryan Williams stepped out, holding a sandwich in one hand and a soda in the other. His smug expression quickly turned into a scowl as he spotted the officers by his car. Marching over, he scoffed, "What do you think you're doing?" Officer Ted remained calm. "Good evening, sir. This area is for delivery vehicles only. We're issuing you a ticket for the violation." Ryan let out a mocking laugh, shaking his head. "Do you even know who I am?" He took a step closer, eyeing the ticket in Officer Sam's hand. "My father runs this town. Do you really think you can ticket me?" Officer Sam, unfazed, glanced up briefly. "Your license plate says Williams. If you're the mayor's son, then you should know better than anyone that the law applies to everyone." Ryan's face turned red with anger. His arrogance had always worked before. People backed down the moment he mentioned his father. But these officers weren't intimidated. Frustration boiling over, he snatched the ticket from Officer Sam's hand, ripped it into pieces, and tossed the scraps onto the ground. "I don't have to listen to you," he sneered. Officer Ted sighed. "Sir, you're obstructing justice. If you continue, we'll have to take further action." Ryan smirked. "Oh yeah? I'd love to see you try." Then, without warning, he swung his hand and struck Officer Sam hard across the face. The slap echoed down the street, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. At that moment, Ryan had crossed a line he could never take back. The moment Ryan's hand struck Officer Sam's face, the air grew tense. Officer Ted's expression hardened as he immediately reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we have an officer assault on Greenfield Avenue, requesting immediate backup." His voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the urgency. Ryan stood tall, arms crossed, still convinced that his last name made him untouchable. "You're making a big mistake," he sneered. "Do you know what my father will do to you?" But before he could say another word, the distant sound of sirens filled the air. Within moments, multiple police cars turned onto the narrow street. red and blue lights flashing against the buildings. Officers stepped out, approaching cautiously, their eyes locked on Ryan. The crowd outside the deli began to grow, some curious, others whispering amongst themselves. Ryan glanced around, still trying to maintain his arrogance, but for the first time, there was hesitation in his eyes. "This is ridiculous," he scoffed. "You all work for my father." Officer Mark Collins, a tall, no-nonsense officer with years of experience, stepped forward. "No," he said firmly. "We work for the law." Then he turned to the nearby officers. "Cuff him." Ryan's confidence finally cracked. "Wait, wait," he protested, holding up his hands as two officers stepped forward. "You're actually arresting me?" "That's right," Officer Ted said, watching as the cuffs snapped around Ryan's wrists. "When you assaulted an officer, you left us no choice." As they guided Ryan toward the back of the squad car, the bystanders murmured amongst themselves. Some were shocked to see the mayor's son being taken away, but others, tired of his years of reckless behavior, nodded in approval. Near the deli, a small elderly woman shook her head and muttered, "Finally, someone stood up to that troublemaker." Officer Sam, still rubbing his cheek, glanced over and gave her a small nod. Justice had finally caught up with Ryan Williams. At City Hall, Mayor Robert Williams sat behind his large oak desk, his phone ringing nonstop. Reporters, concerned citizens, and even his own advisors were all demanding answers. The scandal was spreading fast. His son, Ryan Williams, had been arrested for assaulting a police officer. The mayor, known for his calm and composed demeanor, felt a rare wave of unease. He had always managed to smooth things over for Ryan in the past, but this time, it wasn't just a minor issue. This time, his son had crossed a serious line. Taking a deep breath, Robert picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. Chief Jackson, the head of the Greenfield Police Department. After a few rings, the chief answered. "Robert," Chief Jackson began, his tone already firm. "I know why you're calling, but you should know my hands are tied." The mayor leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Jackson, we've known each other a long time. Isn't there a way to handle this quietly? Maybe a warning? Some community service?" Chief Jackson didn't hesitate. "Robert, your son didn't just break a rule. He struck an officer. If we let him off now, what message does that send? To my officers? To the people of Greenfield?" The mayor fell silent, gripping the phone tighter. He wanted to protect Ryan, just as he always had. But deep down, he knew the chief was right. Ryan had gone too far. "What happens now?" Robert finally asked, his voice quieter than before. "The legal process has already started," Chief Jackson replied. "Ryan will have to appear in court. It's up to the judge to decide his punishment, but given the circumstances, he could face jail time, a fine, or probation." The weight of those words settled heavily on the mayor. This time, there was no escaping the consequences. Ryan wasn't just the mayor's son anymore. He was a man who had broken the law, and now he had to face justice like everyone else. As the heavy steel door of the jail cell clanged shut, Ryan Williams sat on the hard bench, staring at the cold concrete walls. The reality of his situation was sinking in fast. For the first time in his life, there was no easy way out. No father to smooth things over. No special treatment because of his last name. He was just another inmate, stripped of the privilege he had always relied on. The other detainees gave him curious glances, some recognizing him, others indifferent. Ryan kept to himself, the weight of his arrogance and mistakes pressing down on him like never before. Meanwhile, back at the Greenfield Police Department, Officers Sam Robbins and Ted Morin stood before their fellow officers as Chief Jackson addressed them. Last night, these officers faced a tough situation. They were threatened, disrespected, and even assaulted. but they held their ground and upheld the law with professionalism and integrity, he said. A round of nods and murmurs of approval filled the room. Officer Sam, still feeling the slight sting on his cheek from Ryan's slap, gave a small smile. "We just did our job," he said simply. Officer Ted added, "People needed to see that justice is fair. No one should be above the law, no matter their name." The department stood behind them, knowing that their actions had sent a powerful message to the entire town. Greenfield wasn't a place where power and privilege could override justice anymore. And as Ryan sat alone in his cell, he finally started to understand what that meant. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, concerned citizens, and even some of Ryan Williams's old friends had gathered to witness the moment they never thought would come: the mayor's son finally facing justice. Ryan sat at the defendant's table, his once arrogant demeanor replaced by quiet tension. He avoided eye contact with the people watching, but he could feel their stares. The judge, an experienced woman known for her fairness, flipped through Ryan's case file. She sighed, then looked up, her gaze firm. "Mr. Williams," she began, "this is not your first offense. You have repeatedly disregarded the laws meant to protect this community. But this time, you did more than break a rule. You physically assaulted an officer of the law." Ryan swallowed hard. His father sat in the back of the courtroom, his expression unreadable. For years, Robert Williams had shielded his son from consequences. But now, even he couldn't stop what was coming. The judge continued, "This court will not tolerate such behavior, regardless of who you are. You will serve 3 months of community service, attend mandatory anger management classes, pay a significant fine, and remain on probation. Any further violations will result in jail time." A hushed murmur spread through the courtroom. The people of Greenfield had waited a long time for this, proof that justice applied to everyone, no matter their status. As Ryan stood to be escorted out, he glanced at the crowd. For the first time, he noticed the quiet relief on their faces. The weight of his actions was no longer something his father could carry for him. It was his burden now. And as he stepped out of the courtroom, he knew one thing for sure: Greenfield had changed, and so would he. Wearing an orange vest and holding a trash bag, Ryan Williams stood on the side of the road, picking up litter under the watchful eyes of a supervisor. The same streets he once drove through in his sleek black Mustang now felt different as he worked among the very people he had once dismissed. Some recognized him, others ignored him, but he felt the weight of their silent judgment. This was his punishment: 3 months of community service, a daily reminder that he was no longer untouchable. At first, Ryan resented every second of it. But as the days passed, something changed. He met people who had struggled far more than he ever had. Single parents working 2 jobs, elderly residents doing their part to keep the town clean, volunteers who truly cared about the community. For the first time, he listened instead of demanding, observed instead of assuming. He began to realize that respect wasn't something handed down by a last name. It was earned through actions. Meanwhile, the town of Greenfield watched, taking cautious satisfaction in what they saw. The system had worked. For too long, Ryan had escaped consequences. But now, justice had proven that no one, no matter their connections, was above the law. Mayor Robert Williams remained quiet, knowing his influence could no longer shield his son. As Ryan finished another long day of work, wiping sweat from his brow, he saw a familiar face: the elderly woman from the deli, the one who had whispered, "Finally, someone stood up to that troublemaker." This time, she simply nodded at him, a small but significant gesture. For the first time in his life, Ryan didn't feel entitled to respect. He wanted to earn it. Ryan Williams thought his father's power would always protect him, but in the end, justice proved stronger than privilege. His story is a reminder that no one is above the law. No matter how much influence someone has, actions have consequences, and accountability is what keeps a community fair and just. What do you think? Did Ryan get the punishment he deserved? Or should the consequences have been even harsher? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating real-life justice stories. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.